Hey there, Beverly Hills 90210 fans. It's now time to dive deep into an episode-by-episode, character-by-character, song-by-song account of the making of your favorite zip code. With your host, Charles Rosen.
I sit in a chair. It's one of Sandy's antiques. The whole thing breaks.
Larry Mullen.
He shouldn't be even in the show. I hope they're going to kill him, and they did.
Pete Ferrero.
Up my TV crush is Claire Arnold. So, she has to come on the show at this point.
And representing the fans, Lilly Amarim.
Brian, I love you. I have dreamt about you.
Along with many special guests. And your questions. So sit back and relax because it's totally time for the Beverly Hills 90210 show.
All right. We have a loaded panel of people this week. This is very exciting. Talking about double ups. Chuck, I know me and you have wanted to talk about this for some time now, but let me start by introducing everybody around the room. And I will start with David Semel. David, how are you?
Hey, Peter.
Yeah.
I'm hearing another version of the show running.
I'm not sure about that. I don't.
Or I think I'm hearing a massive delay.
It could be a delay. I was saying before we started, if you see the button that says Leave Studio, if you hit Leave Studio and then come back in, sometimes that will fix the issue.
Let me try that.
Yeah, cool. All right, so let's start off with Diana Valentine.
Hello, how are y'all?
How's everything going with you?
Everything's great
in this time period. I know you've done quite a bit since the 90210 world. Where people could have seen some of the stuff that you've done since 90210? What other what things have you worked on?
Well, scripting wise, I kind of went from 90210 to Charmed to Nip Tuck, and then to NCIS Los Angeles, which was the last thing I script supervised on.
Okay.
Did you do all of Nip Tuck?
I came in the second season and did the rest of the show, and my first episodic directing was Christian Troy 2, which was the third episode before the show finished.
That was a tough show. That was a brutal one to watch.
That was interesting.
I'm going to be progressive. Whoa.
It was one of those ones when the scripts came out, everybody at lunchtime was reading the script because it was just so crazy.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then also with us here is Drew Kinney, was the art director on 90210, right?
Yes, absolutely. How are you doing?
Good, man. So what about you? What have you been doing since the 90210 days?
Well, I quote unquote retired from the business shortly thereafter and became a college professor, which I was for nearly 20 years. And now I work for a grocery store chain, Food Line, doing digital designs like website design, advertising, that kind of stuff.
Very cool. Very awesome. And then David Semel, how's the show going for you now?
It's going great. I'm only hearing one of you.
Okay. Let's see. Let's try this. If you can also try to hit the refresh button in your browser. Sometimes they say that works.
No, it's good. I'm good.
Oh, you're good. You're clear. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. So tell me what you've done since 90210.
Well, wow. I've been busy directing a fair amount of one-hour television. Most recently, I did The Watchmen. And I just did this new show for HBO called The Nevers with Joss Whedon, which got shut down because of, our global pandemic, but hopefully they'll have a chance to finish up.
You did one of The Watchmen, David. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Great show.
Great experience. Very, very cool to be involved with that.
I noticed that two of the Emmy nominations that the show received, one was David Eisenberg, who's a young editor, whose father Max was a 902 writer and a good friend. He works for the Clippers, so I don't hold that against him. And then the other editor, Hank Van Eegen, who did the show. Hank was our editor on 90210 and did a couple of years and was a fine guy. And I got to hang out with him in Rome one day. It was a lot of fun. Good guy. Happy for all of you.
I worked with Hank a bunch over the years on a bunch of different shows. And David, who actually cut my episode, I'd never worked with before, but was obviously thrilled to see that he got nominated.
Excellent.
That's very cool.
good.
I think you did a couple of episodes of Heroes too, maybe at some point in your.
I did the pilot. I just did the one episode, but I did the first one.
Yeah, I love that
great.
show. Yes.
Thanks.
That was good. That received an Emmy nomination. He doesn't have a publicist here, so I'm the best he's got.
Chuck, it's been sort of a long time that you've been kind of my pseudo publicist, isn't it?
Nah, it was, but not for the last 10 years. You've been on your own. I'm inspired today.
Sometimes you got to let the birds leave the nest.
I'm going to also introduce everybody to Melanie Rose before I get into other people here, because Melanie is subbing for Lilly this week, representing the fans. So just wanted everybody to know that Lilly will be back next week, but she needed some time. So we've got Melanie here. Hey, Melanie, how are you?
Hey, everybody. I'm great.
Hello, Melanie.
Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, it should be a fun one.
Yeah.
And then,
Got lots of good questions.
cool. And then we have Allison. Sara Melson is here. And I commented before the show that I knew her from the Wonder Years, right? She had done an episode of the Wonder Years. What have you been doing since 90210?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like my life as an adult has been sort of divided into like 3 acts so far.
That's a good dramatic structure, Sara.
Yeah, like,
I thought it was about structure.
it's like different lifetimes, you know what I'm saying? Like it was so long ago. But anyways, I did a bunch of acting, as you might know, like all through the 90s, and ended up at that time, even though I had just graduated college, was playing a lot of teenage, parts through the 90s. Then I full disclosure, had some really like harrowing #MeToo Hollywood cliche episodes that we don't need to go into here, but suffice to say, it really threw me for a loop. And yeah, that's pretty much why I stopped acting, which is kind of a bummer, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I had unlike a lot of people, I actually was working and had a good career. But I just couldn't take that dynamic at all. And so after kind of trying to like slog through it for a little while longer, I just sort of was like, I think I'm going to kind of look for other things to do. So at that time, I had a band that I had started, and I had because I'm a songwriter and a singer too. And I kind of got a little more serious about that and ended up making a record. Just on our own, me and the band. And then I ended up getting a record deal.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I put out a record. My first album came out 12 years ago. So 2008. And then
Time out. It was a great, not only was it a great album.
Oh, thank you.
Sara actually drove to our house when we lived in Westwood to give me a copy of, I don't even know if it was released yet, because I had called her lawyer, who happens to be my son-in-law's older brother, and said, I said, don't know anybody who does music, but isn't it? And you were the client, and I think we licensed 3 of your songs.
You did.
And one of them
What was the name of the band?
It was just
right.
Sara.
And one of them was
it was just solo artist.
And then one of them was a Chevy commercial.
Oh yeah,
right?
oh yeah. Oh no, yeah. No, my songs have been on like Grey's Anatomy and different shows.
Are you on iTunes?
Yeah. I'm on iTunes, Spotify.
Nice.
And I have a new release that's coming out next Friday, the 7th, August 7th.
Congratulations!
Very cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we licensed it for South of Nowhere.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I said used the title.
Exactly.
Larry wrote on that too.
I still get so much nice I get fan messages from that show, from the music being on. It's so interesting, the gay overlap too, because I played a lesbian on this episode, on these episodes, and then South of Nowhere. It's just, I don't know. But
well, think of how that makes me feel. I wrote both. So what does that say about
there
me?
you go. I don't know.
I don't know.
We love women. Chuck.
I know, that is for sure.
But that being said,
she's going to be looking up your music. So there you go.
Thank you. And I have to say, it's so funny because I've been thinking I really actually do want to do more acting,
Good.
especially now that all the everything's come full circle with like people just like I hadn't even really I had really repressed a lot of that stuff, and sort of now it's like come out, and I'm like feeling I'm working through it, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, F that, why did I quit? You know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, just putting that out there, should anyone be back to
Anyone here?
post-COVID activity.
You have two talented and working directors there, so
Be on this call. Somebody can put that in the
Right.
Melson, Melson. Yes.
Correct.
And then also we have the two usual suspects, my T-shirt twin, right? Larry Mullen. We're both wearing the same T-shirt. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. It's always a pleasure to actually look at these shows again, which we probably should start talking about this soon. But yeah, I mean, it was great to do that. I've had a productive week, and it was always a treat to kind of go back and look at stuff you haven't seen since it aired and go, wow, how the heck did we put all those things together and did that? And, oh, my God. What courage. Thank you, guys. Hi, Chuck.
And, also you're a starring role in this episode. Well, let's not forget.
But,
he went out and got the road.
I had written a much bigger part for myself, but Chuck cut it out. I had many scenes. The roadie, we see the roadie at home, we see him getting high, and we see the roadie getting...
I remember getting a fair amount of your backstory from you, Larry, and I thought you did a pretty effective job in your one or two lines of. I felt a lot of that character's backstory. I felt their pain.
Well, the truth be told, I was a roadie, and I will tell the story now since it's a place.
I actually thought you were a roadie. I thought you, yeah.
Well, not only was I a roadie, I was a roadie for Blood, Sweat, and Tears, but my manager, my road manager, was a guy named Larry Waterman. And when we were rehearsing the scene, I looked over at the Rolling Stones road manager, and it was Larry Waterman. So this was like 1995. I was in 1969. I was a roadie with them. And I said, Larry, it's Larry Mullen. He went, oh my God, what band you with? I went, no, I'm a writer producer on the show. It was like the greatest kind of surrender. It was crazy.
Oh, that's funny.
That's good.
All right, and then we have Chuck Rosen, who put this whole thing together. Man, this is really awesome. It's super exciting to have everybody reunited and whatnot. How's the week been going for you? You were away last week. We all missed you. You should have seen all the messages. Where's Chuck? Where's Chuck? Where's Chuck? So
it was a real special week for us. It was the first time all the kids and my little granddaughter got to be in the same place for a week. We were up in Mammoth Mountain, which is I've only known it many, many years ago in winter. Dave, I thought when I was going to be David that he'd be up in Utah because he's got a place up there. He spends time up there in winter and I guess summer too. You always think of the mountains, the winter resorts, but they are so beautiful. And Mammoth has all the lakes. And this little baby became a human being. You know how that happens right in front of our eyes.
Yeah. That's very awesome. Chuck, let's start here. Tell me where the idea of doing double ups came to your brain, or how did it start that we're going to start doing episodes? And maybe we can explain once again for anybody who's watching us for the first time what that even means, a double up.
Okay. Well, 90210, it was, I don't quite know why it affected our show and nobody else's show, really. Melrose, but it seemed like we would put out a new show and everybody would flock to it. But God forbid we'd ever have to repeat that episode. Oh, I've already seen that one. I know what Kelly. Today, look at our wonderful fans. They watch them, 150 times each one. But then they didn't want to watch more than one. It was so Fox knew that they had to put, original episodes out there. And we had already pushed the envelope pretty hard with I think it was 28 hours actually it was 29 hours we did in our third season, but that was because of basically the summer episodes, so we had a wider time to do it. Between seasons 3 and seasons 4 we actually got time off. There was no summer episodes, so we actually, when I say time off, the writers didn't get time off. The writers never got time off. But everybody else at that point, there was a legitimate hiatus. And so then we had to, and they didn't want to just do 28 episodes. Now they wanted to do 32. And the only way to make that happen was to do 2 at the same time. And as I've said, a motivating factor from day one, once we became a hit, starting our second year, Greed. And 32 hours instead of 22 hours is 10 times more than anyone's, theoretically payday. So nobody, I never heard one person said, oh, we shouldn't be doing this. This is crazy. Because even someone like yourself, now Diana, but let's do something just general here, because the difference, we have, our two crew members, interesting, Diana was on the set and Drew was behind the scenes. So if you think about Diana, if there were two shows going at once, she could not be the script supervisor in two places. So we would hire an additional script supervisor. So you didn't get financially that full, as a production person, that full benefit of the extra episodes.
No.
Is that right? Am I right?
Yes, you're right.
So did Double Ups mean anything to you? I mean, or was it just another episode with a bunch of strange crew members?
I think the only thing that it meant was that I still had to read all of the scripts because for the continuity throughout the entire season. So that was it.
And Diana also didn't you have to deal with the actors who were still needing the kind of support you offered, even though you weren't on that episode? Like you still had to.
Yes. But I find that on every show anyway as a script supervisor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
but
I was going to say, what does David mean when he asks that question? So for fans watching, we can break that down. When support, what does that mean?
Well, because as a script supervisor working closely with a director, you have directors that come in and out of episodes throughout the season. But the person there that's dealing with the continuity of the entire show is a script supervisor because they're there every single episode. So sometimes, especially if you have a really busy episode, you have actors that'll come to the script supervisor just to talk about the arc of, episodes, 4 through 7 that they're dealing with right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And what about for Drew then? Drew, Chuck, you were saying Drew was behind the scenes. So was he somebody that was affected by getting sets ready for 2 episodes at a time then, Drew?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was working on 4 episodes simultaneously for Double Ups for all those years. And it was, I tried to explain this years later to somebody else who was like, well, it sounds really great because you could make a lot of money. I'm like, yeah, but you have to blow off your entire life, everything you were going to do. Like all of a sudden I felt like a cop who was having like bad relationships and people going, well, you got to have more time. Sorry, I've got Double Ups for another month and a half. So see you later.
Well, Drew, think of Double Ups. Think of all the 5 years I did 90210 as was one big giant double up. Because all there was show life. I used to call it show life.
Absolutely.
Actually.
Yeah, I mean, I was in my 20s. I didn't really know any different. I was like, yeah, let's go, man.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Drew, you're also being pretty humble because that set you designed for the Rolling Stones on stage in the midst of Double Ups was pretty impressive.
We can pull a rabbit out of a hat every now and then.
Muntz is joining us in chats, if you guys remember Ryan, and he said hard work indeed. Yeah.
Hi, Ryan.
Yeah, get well, Ryan. He just had a surgery, I saw.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah, hope you're doing good, man. So why don't we talk a little bit about these? Now, Chuck, you've said to me that these were the mother of the Double Ups because there is so many moving parts in these 2 episodes, right?
Well, they were both production-oriented episodes. You had and David is going to probably tell most of the story about how this came together because it almost didn't, and which Larry knows very well. So we had the huge production of going to film film our actors against the Rolling Stone concert and a little bit of the concert, actually being there. How to even figure out how to do that was an immense challenge. And then we did blow up a car, but we're doing something of that magnitude. We were going to have a fire. And the truth is, I probably spent most of my time between the 2 on the Rolling Stones one just because that one was so tentative for so long. The fire one, I was thinking today, I remember one meeting in particular on that one, which I'll share when appropriate. Diana, which show did you do? Did you do the fire show or did you do the Stones?
The fire. I really wanted to do the Stones, but I did the fire.
But Chuck, you just talked about the Stones thing, and we've talked about this, but no one probably has heard that, so we'll talk about it again.
Sure.
I'm curious to know what it was like for you to get this Rolling Stones episode. I know we've talked about you being a fan and whatnot. Can you reshare that story about how this came into your work?
It's like real estate. It was location, location, location. Every year after the first season, and I know that maybe Dave and Larry know this. I'm sure Diana and Drew didn't. I had to go to the network and tip them off to what we're going to fight about that year after the first season, and especially in the high school years. It was, in other words, what are we doing with sex? And they wanted to know because the sales department after the first season took over what had heretofore been an independent function of standards and practices, the censors. But now the censors reported to sales. We were in Rupert Murdoch's world. And so so every year I had to go talk to him, really a nice man named David Grant, and I'd give him heads up of what we'd be doing. Not the creative side, the business side, just so that we could prove that we weren't just the revolutionaries that we were in our hearts, and we were actually going to be working with our business partners on the show itself. And I walked in his office, and he said, "I'm sorry, I've got to take this." And he picked up the call, and he was happy. He hung up the phone a minute later and said, "Gosh, the Rolling Stones just signed on. We're promoting them." And when I got that one, that's our show. We're doing it. You can do something with the Simpsons if you want, but if it's on Fox, it's got to be us. And by that point, we're going to 5th year. We've done very well from the network, and David said yes, and that's how that started.
But you said it was tentative for a while before, so
I'm gonna punt it over. We'd written a nice script. We had all the other scripts. I'm gonna punt it over to when my friend Dave, who started prep on this episode, what he was facing, and some of the twists and turns we had to figure out how to get the personnel to get this done. In the beginning.
It was pretty spectacular. I have to say, it was fun watching it, Chuck. And all these years later, I've been incredibly blessed to have done some pretty cool things in my career. But just looking at that footage again and realizing what it took and how exciting it was to be a part of it. I do remember that we never really had the full go-ahead until we were like days away from shooting. But just of the logistics, to shoot, eight of the cast members went to the concert, right? There were 4 groupings. There were 4 groupings of 2. Valerie didn't go. That's right, and Luke didn't go for obvious reasons.
Right.
And so the logistics, because you have to remember, I mean, maybe not the Rolling Stones, but those cast members at that point were pretty popular. So there was just kind of a tremendous amount of logistics involved in how to get them in, how to get them into position. We had I remember, Chuck, we sort of worked out a way that we could justify them being all over so that you could give the audience an up close view, because Brandon and Gabrielle had, the front row seats. I think Kelly was up in the sort of VIP lounge. Steve and the girl he was with were in the mosh pit. And I remember one of the things that was so interesting to me is that what we literally did was we knew their set list. They had told us their set list. And so we had worked out that I was going to leapfrog. We sort of had 2 shooting crews. So I was going to be with, Steve and I can't remember the actress's name or the character, but we were going to be with them for Start Me Up. And then I had literally like my own security that was pushing through the crowd to get me to the second location, which was maybe Jenny up in the booth. And then that first crew who was shooting Steve and that other actress would then go to where Brandon and where Jason and Gabrielle were.
Right.
And so it was just this sort of hopscotching. And then I would run after we shot them during, Satisfaction. We then, for the next song, jumped to the first crew, which had gone to the third position. And I also remember they had built this kind of like this RF, this radio frequency that was around the Rose Bowl, but was completely our frequency, so that because there was all this communication with people on headphones and microphones to the different crew and the different ADs who were looking out for the different pods of crew and cast members. So it was a very impressive logistic feat that went off without a hitch. And the thing that I kept saying was, I've got to get a shot that connects directly Mick Jagger and Jason Priestley. I got to prove that they were there. It wasn't some trickery.
Right.
Because truth be told, a lot of that footage, frankly, was from, I don't know if I should reel this, Chuck, but a lot of the footage
Grang and Balding. I'm proud of you found those guys, Grang and Balding.
That's right. That's right. I forgot that that's their name, but they had shot the concert.
Right.
So because it was a pretty straightforward
In
concert.
Jersey, yeah.
Yeah. So we were able to cut that with the shots of our cast members there. And so there was this tunnel that that Jason and Gabrielle came out of, and I knew that we could sort of visually tie them in. I was hoping all through prep that I was going to have some time with the Rolling Stones. That didn't happen. And we didn't know what they knew, what they were into it or not. Sure enough, we're down there. We shoot Jason and Gabrielle coming in, and I wanted to bring them in and then hand off. And as we handed off, Mick's coming right to us. I mean, we're literally right there. And so I swear to God, he looked at the camera. I mean, I think he knew exactly what was going on, because he strutted across the stage and then he came back again, as if to say, like, you want another bite at the apple?
Well, a couple of embellishments, a couple of things just to add. This was a major negotiation about how he had to shoot, when he had to shoot this. We had they told us we had one. Why I was so amped up, the Stones said we had one chance to get it, and that was it. He was coming down. We'd shoot over, because theoretically their rationale was, we don't want to. You'll have your lights on, and it will disturb the fan experience. Yeah. So we have to adjust. So David gets that first shot of him coming down, and I almost blow the shot because I'm so happy that they got the shot at all. I go, "Great, we've done it. We're still rolling, idiot." I go, "Okay." But the thing is that then Mick finishes, he goes back, and then all of a sudden, "Hey, get out your camera. Keith Richard is coming." And now Keith Richard, he's not going to be,
he's upstaged.
Upstaged by Mr. Mick Jagger. So he comes down, he plays for David, he goes away, and Mick comes back a second time. Yeah. So we had a little more footage to work with.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was a ton of fun.
And then I always tell
By the way,
story.
Chuck, do you remember?
Go on, Dave.
Do you remember what I made a big thing about? So they were playing on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and they were dark Thursday. And Thursday, the dark day, is when we shot. Some people call it the Jamie Walters, Tori Spelling scene. I, of course, call it the Larry Mullen scene, where Jamie and Tori were just really very supportive as background players. But we shot on the stage, which in and of itself, frankly, Chuck, was one of the coolest things, to be standing up on that stage, looking out at a empty Rose Bowl with all that incredible set that the Stones came, and then watching Jamie play was just such a thrill. But I said, I was like, guys, I think here's what we're going to need to do. So we were shooting the concert on Friday, and I think we shot those scenes, all of them around the stadium with our extras and all that stuff, either on Tuesday and Wednesday. I said, this is a big production. I think some of the core of us need to go to the concert on Thursday when it's dark, just to make sure, or not on the dark day, I'm sorry, on the
Wednesday,
we weren't shooting, the Wednesday or whatever. I said, I just think we need to go to make sure that it's going to work. And I think we're all going to need all access passes. And so about 8 of us, and I shot that day's work, and immediately, as soon as I was done, raced over to the stadium, the Rose Bowl, and actually heard everybody, JP, I think Paul, whoever else came that night, I could hear as I was pulling in or as I was being driven in, I could hear the Chili Peppers. If you remember, they were the warm-up band.
Yeah.
And I could hear them finishing. So I just hightailed it in. And that tunnel, I ducked in, the tunnel where the football players coming out. This is one of the most amazing things that ever.
Yeah.
The most amazing things that ever happened to me. I was following a van, and it was going about 5 miles an hour as I was just kind of hoofing into it to try to get out to where Jason and Gabrielle were going to be. And the van stops right before it gets out to where it would go out onto the field. Doors open, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and whoever else was in the van. And I'm standing literally on the back of I'm standing at the bumper of the van. They go up into this staircase, and I'm telling you, they looked like they were 5 guys going to work. Just like no big deal. As soon as they disappeared up the stairs, I ran out and got out onto the front of the stage and was looking up, and it was these 5 guys going to work. And in that 20 seconds where they disappeared from my view, they came out in front of 70,000 people, and they were the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It was the coolest thing ever.
You alluded to this Emmy Award scene. I have it here. Hang on.
Hey, man, what are you doing? Get out of here.
Sorry, man. No harm done. Show's over.
This is so cool.
There it is.
It's the final, by the way, it's the final cutaway that makes the performance.
Yes, totally.
How many takes did you have to do with him? How many takes?
Listen, he nailed it out of the park the first one. And I said, Larry, I got it.
I was the producer too. I don't want to use time to myself.
We always remember, Dave. We always remember the shot where with Jason and Gabrielle, of course, because it was there. But you got one other shot. I was standing around watching it, and I think there was just as much adrenaline pumping, because if you have the episode and can look back at it, when the concert really physically started, the first time you heard the music, that's when Tori and Jamie run out of the tunnel and up to where they're going to watch the show. And that was that was not, that was the song they were playing, the song we were using. That was all contained. That was a pretty
what also
work too.
Was so fun, Chuck. The cast was so genuinely excited by the whole thing. They couldn't have been more, participatory. And really, that's not.
Well, I think they were won over because it's such an overwhelming experience. But I remember distinctly, and Chuck remembers, we were there, and Jason came in and looked at us and went, "The Rolling Stones."
No, Larry.
He's like, exactly right. You. And so I used that as a writer to give those attitudes to like Cindy Walsh and the other people, not led to the whole flaming of the Stones, because that's what the young people, I figured, they don't, because it was right in between their popularity. They were, obviously they needed us.
And it just wasn't. It just wasn't. By the way, the cast. I'll say, not you, Drew, because you weren't at the Rose Bowl. You weren't in this set, so I give you absolutely.
Drew was a Grateful Dead guy.
Right. Exactly. Well, he knows that's 2 of us. But on this, so Dave gets the shot, and we're done. We're done. We've done it. We have done the whole thing. Was the last one, and now. I am telling you, we are 10 yards from the stage. We are as close to the stage as you could possibly get. And nobody's going to tell us to move. You can stay as long as you want. And one by one, they all start peeling away. We got to load the truck. We got to do it now. Everybody starts leaving. And the last 2 people standing there was Christine Elise and myself. Christine wasn't in the scene. She just wanted to be at the concert. So there she was, and knew we had the access down there. And eventually then Jason comes back and goes, Christine. And so she has to leave. So I'm the last one standing, last man standing. And
David, did you have
it was an exciting night, though. I mean, I was at that show, and obviously we had good seats. We were watching the fruits of our labor, and it was just a magical night in LA. It was, I remember there was Cindy Crawford was sitting in front of us, and the guy Robert Shapiro, they showed him on the TV screen, like he had just gotten OJ off. People cheered.
Hey, David, did you have a different experience with Jason being excited about this? You were
I mean, I don't remember him griping about it. But I will say, if you look at that shot, Larry, as I did, having not seen, he's like, this is pretty cool.
Oh,
so
whatever you're there, we want more.
Yeah, there's no question. So
just also remember, this was the number 124 for us. So, so Jay had been through a few episodes by that point.
You know, the other thing we should mention is these 2 episodes were sweeps episodes. So these were the money balls. That's why we went for something so big.
That's why they were so
Now,
big.
the other thing, I just have one short gripe here. And I remember if Chuck doesn't share my thing, but this great episode that David directed, and there's all other things too. There's Luke in rehab, and there's this great trial scene with a character named Dershembaum. Going like Dershembaum. But
Dershowitz. That's why you can grill him.
Dershowitz. Exactly. But no, these were sweeps episodes, and they aired the Rolling Stones episode on the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. We begged them not to because our audience were driving home from college. It was so cruel of them to do, and it was not a highly rated episode. It just tore my fucking heart out.
Yeah,
I remember that at all.
I won't say anymore. I've done enough.
You mentioned the Dylan scene, and we get Willie gets a line in this thing. It's probably one of the best lines in the episode, right? You were talking about that with me once before, Larry.
Oh yeah, no, I always felt like it was a great scene where everyone, you go to rehab and you talk to people and you try to pump them up or whatever. So I thought there'd be a way to kind of make an interesting scene if one guy doesn't say anything, and the perfect guy was Willie. And so he's there, and the whole scene's going on, and nothing happens. And finally, Dylan says, "Hey, Willie, you came all the way out here. You got nothing to say?" And then Willie goes, "I don't know what to say, Dylan. You just keep messing up." And it's just like, it stings me. So he gets through. It's so simple. So that was a lovely moment.
Who asked you anyway, right? Dylan has that.
Yeah, and then he goes, "Who asked you anyway?" Yeah, Dylan improvised that. There's a bunch of
interesting thing that's happening in both these episodes, and Chuck brought this up to me, is that there's a computer element to both of the things that are happening, right? Claire and David are trolling, which is maybe the first time on TV we're seeing live trolls. And then also the fire episode, the reason why Allison comes to it is because it got dropped in the wrong forum.
The electronic bulletin board. This is before the WWW, before the World Wide Web. But as Chuck knows, like the Rolling Stones, Delphi was another company that Fox had bought. So they were like an IPS, like a AOL dial-up service. So we said, what the hell? We'll just kind of put them in. We're real whores. We just throw them up there. Claire goes, "I'll have to get on the Delphi service," and she kind of goes. He drops the party invitation into the women seeking women. It was a cheap gag, but it works.
No, I love it. But was it important? Like, what was it because of the Fox thing? Is that why you guys were trying to do some computer stuff? Because this is ahead of its.
Well, it was not as you were going to say ahead of its time. This was its time, not ahead or behind. It was when it was starting out, and I know this because it was near the end of the first season that Steve Wasserman and Jessica Klein come in, and they are really excited about something because there's this new service called Prodigy, and they have a chat room, and people are talking about our television show. So we get a sense. This is the first time, if you want to know what fans think, you got to do these major testing and stuff like this. But we could actually, we can look and hear what the fans have to say. And don't think we didn't use those in the arguments until the network caught on that. Did you know there was a chat room called Prodigy? Yes, we did. And it was very helpful research to do that and use that. But I bring it up because it was at the time of computers, and to think that, but most shows weren't putting it into plots. And I think we both times, could find out because we were dealing with younger people and they would be having computers. Conversely, I know no one who wanted to use computers less in his television shows than Aaron Spelling. I can show you that he'd circle them on computers, because all he saw about computers is you take a shot of the screen and it's small and it's ugly. We're the handsome people, So he didn't like computers. And let me always know that whenever Larry wrote in a computer.
Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Oh, I was gonna say, Larry, before you mentioned you wrote all the flaming stuff about the Stones, there was sort of a sentiment at the time about the Stones being an older band, and they were at a point where I know they had done MTV that year and all that stuff. So were you playing off of that, or was it all coming from the Jason conversation that you had?
Well, I mean, Jason just typified a lot of what, his generation of people thought of the Stones. They had not fully embraced them at that point. They were, we were coming off of grunge at that point, and, Kurt Cobain, and there was a little bit of a commercialism thing in here. I remember a little backlash from people because, we're like promoting Fox's act, and, so I mean, but we, as Chuck, when we heard the Rolling Stones, there was no way we were not going to try to get involved in that. Because we were big fans. And when you see this episode, I mean, it starts so great with the music in the Walsh house, and Brandon's trying to learn about the French Revolution, and now all of a sudden he hears this loud music like reverberate in the house, and it's his dad, which I guess is true, but it's just great. I mean, and this track is great, and I mean, and then we actually see a wonderful scene where they get real sexy, and Valerie interrupts them, which is a real kind of a switch over from the kids of the day. Oh, our dear Carol Potter and Jim Eckhouse. Yeah, they think they have the house to themselves that night because everyone's at the concert. They're gonna basically go at it,
So Pete, you asked about the Stones and feeling defensive about being the older band, the senior band. What the Stones did to compensate for that, they made a mistake, and you and I once talked about this. They made a mistake in 1972 to have their older act, their opening act be Stevie Wonder, and Stevie Wonder blew them out. They stayed off. It was at Winterland. They stayed off stage for almost 2 hours because Stevie. And when they came on and they were promoting an album called Exile on Main Street, which had a lot of California stuff, it didn't rise to the challenge.
Yeah.
Stevie was supposed to do the whole tour. He ended at San Francisco. But what happened after that, and I once saw it with Guns N' Roses, and here you saw it when Dave was mentioning the Chili Peppers. The Stones would not let the other bands go into the sound systems. So they had to cart in their own sound systems, which under no circumstance could be the equivalent of what the Stones sounded like. So you would never, Guns N' Roses were good, but wow, the Stones, and they successfully did that. And I was told or read something just recently, they still do that.
Interesting.
Well, there's a classic story with Leonard Skinner where Ronnie Van Zant was not allowed to go on that projection, which Mick Jagger prances down, and he went down it, and then they were off the tour after that.
Wow. Interesting stuff. Now, Chuck, in terms of the other episode, the Up in Flames episode, did you get any pushback from Aaron at all about this fire?
Oh, yes. Well, yes. There were 2 meetings, as I said, and they were like back to back. What Aaron's concern was, and rightly so, was, oh, what are you doing? You have this beautiful girl, and you're going to burn her face? What are you going to do? We're going to find Allison. We're going to create another character, Aaron. We'll burn her face. Some miraculous thing to get out of it. And I promise you, the burns won't be, there might be some on her neck, and we actually defined where it would be on her neck.
Yeah, we had to show tests of that. We had to show tests. We had to show makeup tests.
Yes, we did. And the other meeting, which was was much more tense. I will tell you, probably the most tense production meeting we had, more than the Stones, more than the even blowing up the car. The director's name was Gil Shilton, and he'd only done a few things for us at that point. He was Canadian. He was more of a journeyman director, both in Canada and the U.S. I thought he was a terrific director. With Little Fishes was the first thing he did for us, and then now it's a year later. He's come back. He's done this, and Diana and Dave know that you go up. The directors in an episodic experience or others, limited series, whatever it would be, whatever you're doing, come up to the people who are running it or the money people and say, "Don't worry, I got this covered. This is how I'm going to do it." And Paul had concerns of how he wanted to do it, not how he was going to spend it. How is this? Now, I don't remember, Drew, was that bathroom, did you guys build that bathroom or was that on set?
We built that.
Yeah.
So we had a double, yeah.
And were there other parts? Was that the only part of the party house that was on set, or some of the upstairs also on set?
I'm sure some of the pieces were. When I was watching it, I was thinking the cutaway of the box sparking. I was thinking that because of double ups, that was probably in a parking lot somewhere, like Married with Another Day, a weird location.
Such as can, yeah. And well, so that was the thing, and the idea that he would talk about that the fire coming through the door, and how that was going to work, and where you're going to have the camera, all these kind of things, and it all worked. It all worked, and really is a very frightening sequence.
For Sara, how did you come into this? How did you come into the 90210 universe? Did you? I mean, you auditioned somewhere, I guess. Yeah. Sara? Did we lose Sara?
Frozen?
Sara, she's frozen.
Sara's
She's thinking.
Well, Sara, you click off if you can hear me. She's stuck. I hope
I'm gonna remove her and then see.
But I can answer her question, Peter, because it's one of your stellar questions. How did she come into it? She walked into the room and auditioned.
And we thought, wow, she make a great lesbian. And that's what we said.
That's right. That's right. And we didn't ask. We did not
I
ask.
was going to say, we should mention a couple of people. Obviously, Paul Wagner was a major part of these double ups and in designing them. And there was also a guy we called the double ups czar, which was Ken Stringer.
Ken Stringer.
I just wanted to just kind of remember their names. Say their names.
Pete, my Wi-Fi went out there for a second.
No worries.
It keeps happening. So if it
well, this one, we talked this about the big one. I remember, and it went on for hours, Larry. I don't know if you were there. This was the two that confounded. We had Ken Stringer and JP John Perret, the unit production manager in this 5th season, and trying to figure out how to board the show, how to make it work.
I was with you because we had to rewrite it. We had to rewrite it. I was going to be right there. I remember that night. We went on late.
Oh my God! It really went till like midnight. It was it was a late night. This one was much later than we usually had out in those warehouses. And the two that were hard to balance was Jenny and Ian. They were the two. Everybody else, it seemed to kind of work where they were, but they were. Do you remember that, Dave? Were you in that room?
Chuck, do you want to explain for everybody what you're talking about? I mean, I don't know how. Yeah. What would happen is on any given show, you make a schedule, and on, back in this day, they were 7-day episodes, and so you'd schedule. It was a lot of moving pieces because you'd have to have the sets and what locations were available, and what cast members were available, because this time a lot of times you were scheduling around their life as well. Other appearances, some related to the show, some just because they had personal desires or whatnot.
And there was a nightclub. Oh no, Shannon wasn't there anymore. Forget it.
Yeah. And then you add into the mix trying to simultaneously do 2 episodes at the same time. So you're trying to create 2 schedules that are not just what's the best for the show and how do you handle the production department's needs and all the other things. But now you've got to make them work in concert with each other. And I know other people have tried it. I'm pretty sure, Chuck, let me be your publicist for a little while. This was the first show to ever do this, right?
Yeah,
Nobody had done it before 90210.
No, even Melson waited a year before they jumped in.
Yeah.
And then they did 32.
Partially, it was pretty ballsy thing to do, to be quite honest. And the fact that it was a bigger cast and it was an ensemble, but if you had, the need for, in this case, Jenny to be in 3 of the 7 days or 4 of the 7 days in a normal episode, now you've got her in the need to be in 3 or 4 days on 2 episodes over the course of 7 working days. So it was a lot of logistics. There were times where actors would be working in the morning on one show, and we had a big enough sound stage, the footprint of the different stages, because you can't shoot 2 scenes on the same stage. So there'd be one scene that could be shot on the Peach Pit on stage. I don't remember the numbers of our stages, if we even had numbers. And then, another scene would maybe have Steve and Jenny and Brian. And then there was a scene going on in the Walsh house that was on a different physical sound stage. So they weren't even interrupting with one's rolling, the other's got to be quiet, right? But they're on different sound stages. And those would have, Carol and James Eckhouse and Jason or whatever, right? But the Herculean effort on these scheduling, the Kenny Stringer, the scheduling czar, and Paul navigating through all these different schedules was incredible. And it was, I mean, they were stressful enough when it was one episode, and then to do Chuck, you did like 4 or 5 banks of 2 at the same time, wasn't it? Like 4 or 5 in a row.
I think we had to do 8. We had to do it 4 or 5 times at least to make it work within the schedule. And so this probably was the second or third batch when you asked before what part of the Devil Up this came in. We had certainly done some before this, I think.
Yes, we had done.
This was a November air date, so I'm just going by that.
Yes, we did. We did in 4 each time we did it. So that we did it in season 4 twice, and I believe we did it in season 5 twice. So this was the major one. I think it was also an earlier one. No, because it was November Street.
But
so
you did.
But
there were multiple double ups at the same. Like it wasn't just these 2 episodes and went back to normal. Wasn't it like block. 2 or 3 blocks of 2, then 2, then 2? I mean, it was
right.
That's intense.
And then again, you have to have there'd be double casting for us. There'd be double pre-production, double production, and double post-production. So that was it was a widowmaker.
For Sara, I'm sorry, you're good now. You can.
Yeah, well, for the moment, it's Murphy's law that as soon as you ask me something, I'll see the spinning.
Totally.
But,
Talk to me about auditioning for 90210 and getting into this universe of it.
Yeah. Well, wait. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chuck. Maybe you would remember. I seem to remember, or maybe I'm just making this up in my head, that the original script for the episode had a kiss. I think we did have a kiss, and then at the last minute, I remember they told me it had been taken out. Is that right?
Where would the kiss have been, you think, Sara?
Like a kiss goodbye in the bathroom.
I think we had some kind of like the network had decided it was like too racy for 2 girls to actually.
Oh, that was not. Yeah, I'm sure.
Right.
What you're describing is what was. I don't remember, but I would be the person who would make them kiss, and they would be the person to say no, they're not going to.
Yeah,
I don't know the specifics, but it sounds very plausible.
It says so much about how far we've come, like societally, in such a relatively short time.
And they had the most trouble. They had the most trouble of any of the issues we would do. Was homosexuality. See, they told me right in the first year, it's a turnoff. And okay, but nonetheless, story-wise, they've been telling stories like this for thousands of, so what are you saying? And we started putting it in, and society started changing too. You have to remember, those who study history, 1992, Bill Clinton gets elected, and in 93, the first thing he's going to do is allow gays to be in the military. And that didn't fly at all with Democrats, by the way, just neither side of the aisle. And so because of that, we had Don't Ask, Don't Tell for how many years that thing went on.
I mean, we feel like we were ahead of things with this one, though. And also in the other part of the in the Stones episode, we have the whole plot where Brandon has a person of color. The guy even calls him out. You have a person of color lawyer.
Say that, yeah.
Whoa, look at that there. It was pretty interesting.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Sara, did you find working with Jenny, we were talking about all these double up stuff. I'm sure she's wonderful, but did you find her, that must be so challenging for actors, I can imagine, to have to kind of know that I'm doing this at the Stone Show and then also have to do all this at the Fire. What was she like to work with? Did she mention any of this to you, that this is?
No, she was great. She was so gracious and down to earth and just really cool. Yeah, we kind of really hit it off. I remember then Dan, was that the name of her guy at the time? Was in a band with members of the Wallflowers. Yeah, Dan was in. I kind of knew him already because from being in music, I was friends with like the Wallflowers guys, and so that was just like a weird small world connection that we had outside of the show, which was kind of cool. But yeah, she was great. I mean, Yeah, I remember being really impressed by how professional she was and how kind of she always struck me as being just very poised, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very cool. Also, in this fire episode, we have the storyline where Emily Valentine's back, right? You mentioned that she was at the Stones show before, Chuck. Who decides to bring Emily back? And that's great. The fans love that. You've always kind of talked about, Chuck, like you have the research of fans like to hear about what's going on with the characters. They like to see the characters coming back. Was this a Jason thing? Like, can we get Christine in this?
No, it wasn't weird. Jason, I mean, obviously they liked working together, and I think I've said in terms of at that time I was doing the show, and the cast members, Jason and Christine is who we'd hang out with more than once, so we knew them that way as well. But no, it really was that you have 32 hours, and here's a character. We know that the audience likes it, so how many episodes are we going to be able to do? Usually we did it, I'm thinking this one, it was twice. Sometimes we would bring a character back for 3 episodes. That's about right for an arc. 2 episodes to about 4 episodes when you're doing a subplot that you're going to carry over episodes.
Melinda says, ironic that Emily returns for the fire episode.
Well, we knew that could be promoted. We knew that could be promoted, even though she had nothing to do with it. She doesn't show up at the fire. But just the thought that Emily Valentine's coming to 90210, we could put that in their heads. So that was kind of intentional.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, everyone knew that was a coincidence there.
Mm-hmm.
And the promo department, I remember at the time, promoted that.
Diana, when we were talking about the perspective of the actors, right, doing double ups, I'm sure you got some of that conversation. Like you talked about trying to help. I don't know if you guide them is the right word on like where the arc is going, what's going on between these 2 episodes to make sure that there's consistency and all that. Do you remember in these particular episodes dealing with any of that with the actors? I know it's a long time ago.
No, I'm surprised. I remember talking to my actors on the last show that I did. I know I was like I said, after I watched the 2 episodes you sent, I went to Wikipedia and read the summary of all the rest of the episodes for the rest of the show till the season finale, because I was like, I remember so little of this episode. What else don't I remember? But it was a long time ago. But I do remember double ups were just crazy because of all the scheduling with Ken and Rick Gunter, the DP, and Steve would bump up to the DP on the other episodes, and it's just all the logistics of all of that stuff. So also you trying to do your double up crew with a lot of keys from your original crew, just so that your actors and stuff feel comfortable between the 2 episodes. There's people on each crew that they know and they feel comfortable with. Right, that was always important. That was really important. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Melanie, do you have some fan questions?
I do. We've actually covered a lot of them so far. This has been a very thorough episode, so great job, guys. This question from Beth. She was wondering if Diana's last name was used to create Emily Valentine's last name.
That's what they told me.
Okay.
It must be true.
It must be true.
Hey, Diana, have those royalty checks cleared?
No, damn it.
Yeah.
Don't mention those.
Okay. Awesome. So this question comes from Alicia, and she said that both episodes had a lot of things going on. There were a few very different storylines all going at the same time. And what was the most challenging aspect of filming both of those episodes together, if you had to pin it down to one thing?
Well, I think it was what I think David actually talked about that. The idea that how it's not just being able to do what's best for the show. You have 2 variables: what's best for the show and what's best for the actors, because they have to go back and forth. So I think probably of everything, that sounds to me would be the toughest. The other was, we kept, that was from a production standpoint, that was the toughest. From the from an administrative standpoint, what was the toughest was continually to answer the questions that the Rolling Stones management had about what we were going to do and how we were going to do it, and things that we seemed to go over 3 days later, we'd be going over again. And it went on like that a lot. And and we went through a publicist, actually, their longtime publicist. And Fran Curtis is her name. And what's her name? I'm sure she's still doing it. I hope so. She's a very nice lady. But I remember her calling me on the after it aired, and was happy. They told me the band was happy with the episode, and that they wanted to know when it's going to air in all the other countries, because they were starting their world tour. And their world tour is why we found out that moment was the reason that they agreed to do it in the first place, because they had the veto power not to do it with Fox. But maybe a selling point was, hey, these guys are in 85, 115 countries around the world. You're going on tour. It's good, all of that. And I explained to them that each one was on its own schedule, and good luck.
Chuck, I thought you were going to say that the question the Rolling Stones had was, does Luke get out of the hospital?
That would be great. One thing I wanted to ask Chuck, I remember we had two names for this, and I think because originally we were going to call it the Voodoo you knew so well, or you do so well, but we had to call it the Rock of Ages because probably we didn't have the rights to the Voodoo Lounge at that point. That's what I'm thinking. Why it has two names? It was like a code name for a while.
They think of everything, these Stones, and they actually copyrighted the word voodoo. I don't know how they got to do that, but they did, and I don't know. We had to change it. They asked us, I guess, but didn't I think? But I have the script over here, and it says that it doesn't say rock. That voodoo. It says
voodoo. Yeah, no, I think in the end we went over. We got it. Yeah, up until the last moment, it was called Rock of Ages.
Too, but this is, I think, is interesting that they didn't really give you a lot of songs to choose from. It's not like you have the entire library of music.
That was also a challenge. Yeah, because the Rolling Stones had sold their catalog to a man who really wanted to really raise the numbers so that you almost couldn't use them. A kind of a precursor of what happened to all the music that we used on 90210. But so we had to look in what songs were in the Stones did that weren't in their catalog that they wrote. So we had the Bo Diddley songs. Well, it starts with the Bo Diddley song. Which one's that?
I think the first one is actually from the Voodoo Lounge album. The first thing we
could use Voodoo Lounge. They would let us use that.
Yeah, I mean, there were some good songs in that.
And for some reason,
you got me rocking.
It's only rock and roll. So we had a Bo Diddley song. It's only rock and roll, and then off the Voodoo Lounge tour. That I think we could put on.
Didn't we also have Start Me Up in there as well?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, Start Me Up.
Live. You did. Yeah, right.
Yeah, live. Well, maybe they let us do that after some negotiation, I guess. Or I
also think it's an interesting story about the tape. We talked about the videotape debacle of trying to find this Jersey tape. I think that's an interesting story about David, you were looking for footage of the Stones playing, and then how did you find out that this company had recorded it?
Chuck, do you remember? Did we have that footage?
No, we were going to go down to. We were going to go. Well, this is an interesting thing.
We were going to shoot it.
We actually were going to go shoot it in San Diego.
Yeah.
Right.
And I knew an independent production company. I thought these people were my friend. We agreed on a price, and then they wanted 3 times more, and I just didn't have it, and they weren't going to let me go. So now what are we going to do? So we started to try to find other people, other groups who could do it. And the thing about Mick Jagger, and I feel it's what Mick Jagger had most in common with Aaron Spelling, is that being the kind of celebrity that they are, they lived in the present tense. Right at that moment. What happened in the past, it was in the past. In the future, who knows? But we're here now. And so Mick Jagger, we presented at least 2 groups to him. Production groups, package people who had done his shot videos of him and shot his concerts in 1983. Well, he didn't want them. He wanted somebody very modern, and I think we knew that as a criticism. And now I give it to Dave. I think it just had come out, and you had found that. You called me up. I remember on a Sunday and said, "These are the guys. They're in Studio City. I don't even know if they're there." Meanwhile, what were we doing? Larry and Steve Wasserman and I were looking at the script and figuring out, if we don't have these plots, what else can we put in to fill it? What else? What other plot can we find to do it? So that was our backup. That's what we were doing at the time. So Dave calls me, and I remember driving. I'm finding the house up on Laurel Canyon, and the thrill of having a call from this Jim Gable was his name, to say, "Eureka, you found it."
Yeah, it was great footage too. I thought they did an amazing job.
Yeah, absolutely. Melanie, what other questions do you have? Do you have some anything for Sara?
Let's see. There was a question about how it was working with Jenny, but we already addressed that one. So, yes. Zara, one of our top fans, was wondering if they were planning to unite Brandon and Emily for good at this point, or if she was brought back just to put Brandon and Kelly to the test.
Good question.
I would say that she was, it was going to be a great situation, because she was going to basically prevent Brandon from going to the rave party, which was going to make him feel really guilty because his girlfriend, was burned in the fire. So it was just that she was serving the show. We always, we're going to work the Brandon Kelly thing. And actually, we're starting to move toward the cult thing, as I remember now. I'm thinking about, she gets out of the rehab and she ends up in the cult, right?
There would have not been. We would not have been able to do the cult plot at all. I'm having flashbacks of Alan Toy right now. But anyway, you wouldn't have been able to do it if at all if we hadn't had the fire. That it would have made no sense.
I mean, we need some
and we used it as such. Yeah.
Okay.
Chuck, real quick, before you said that you were thinking of B plots for in case you didn't have the footage, do you remember what any of those things were?
We were going to have Drew come out and sing. I think that was going to be
I'll tell you, I think Valerie probably had one, because she was kind of underutilized in these episodes, kind of. So I think probably it was something to do with Valerie, I suspect.
Probably. I mean, we were just, free spinning. And let's be truthful. We're talking about it, but when we lived in Westwood, and I had a back office and stuff, and I had a television, and it was a Sunday, and the NFL was playing. So without the sound, never with the sound, but we would just kind of be looking at it, and then in between, plays, what about that?
What else you got, Melanie?
There was a lot of talk asking if it was ever a consideration for Allison and Kelly to get together, and we did kind of address that as well. But there were a lot of fans who were interested to know if that was going to be a storyline down the road. But it sounds like that was a network issue, so probably wouldn't have happened.
I think that was a network issue.
I remember this clearly.
Chuck, we're having a hard time hearing you. There you go. Go ahead. You're good.
I told him one of the reasons I'm besides I'm burnt to a crisp was that the only original story that I got in my arsenal now to do is about lesbians. That's all. That was the only thing that had interested me at that point creatively. Like, what would Jenny do, and how would it be, and beauty and stuff like that I had known. I mean, obviously working with Larry and Jess and whoever, we would have come up with a lot of storylines and could have moved for it. But really, yes, that would have been something to be interesting. Even something. What if they had met 4 years later? I mean, after we were out of the show, I think that edict about bring people back that you use was didn't get passed on to the last bunch who did the show.
No. I mean, we did play the thing out pretty good. I mean, Sara was, there's a number of episodes. I actually played it all the way out to the season ender. It was an important relationship for Kelly Taylor.
Yeah.
I mean, it opened up, a whole other side, because before that she was going to be this shallow model, and then she kind of came to grip with her life a little bit.
Exactly.
A question for Sara popped up. Did people recognize you on the street after your episode and ask you about your time at 90210? I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this is the funniest thing. So I remember, this is a long time after I was on the show, which by now is still a long time ago, but it was like maybe I don't know, like almost 10 years ago, let's say. And I was standing in line at the post office and I was talking on my cell phone, and it was just my voice. It wasn't even, it was just my voice. This girl in front of me turned around and she goes, "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but were you Allison?"
Oh,
and I
wow.
was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I recognized your voice."
Karen, my wife Karen got that too, playing the your ex-girlfriend, because that was the part. She was the older.
Yeah, we Girls on the Side script. Yeah.
Girls on the Side.
Right.
And she did that, and she had one line in a show in one scene we've talked about in the bathroom, and
Nolly Thornton. Yeah.
Nolly Thornton and Luke. And so I understand maybe you getting recognized. Her voice, and it was the same thing. It was based on her voice. So I guess most of the people, and we can ask the fans this. Fans, are you listening with headphones? Is that why the voice, it goes through you?
Well, I do think
I got a question for the fans. Melanie, here's a question for the fans.
Okay.
One of the people in this cast, in this particular, in the Up in Flames, was in another episode as well. What's the actress and what are the 2 episodes?
Ooh.
That's a tough one.
I think I know, but I'm not going to say.
Nobody here is going to, maybe Larry might, nobody here is going to know, but the people who are listening, what is it going to be, Melanie? About 90 seconds it'll come in?
Yeah.
Right, I'm monitoring the comments, so I'm sure we'll see that one come through.
I have a question. We should ask David and Diana, because we do, we all love and remember Luke, but I wanted to know how your experience is working with Luke. No, since we've always asked people this, and we just really want to know.
Yeah.
We miss him.
Diana?
I loved working with Luke from the first day on the set, and we had a really close relationship on the show, kind of like brother and sister to much older sister, but still brother and sister. And I remember one night we were shooting, and I think it was probably in season 6 or the beginning of season 7, but he was ad-libbing something, and I went up and I said, "Luke, you can't say that." I said, "Your character would not say that." And he'd say, how would you know what my character would say? And I say, "Luke, you would say that, but your character wouldn't say that." And he goes, "Diana, what does it say on the back of your chair? It doesn't say director." And I said, "Not yet."
Diana was a script supervisor is the writer's friend, as we were talking about before.
Yeah, she projects the words.
And nobody was better than that. I would, once in a while, you would make even a fuss about it, and I would, find out. Only one time did I make, and really the one who liked to change the dialogue the most was Luke, and I only made him one time shoot it. Because I said you can paraphrase and butcher lines by a man named Rosen, but if you're going to do Shakespeare, you got to say the lines as written, And so I made him in the Christmas episode.
David, I'm curious about you. Did you had some experience working with Luke, right?
I loved Luke. It was very, very difficult for me when he left us. In such an untimely way. We were very friendly beyond just working together on the show. And I actually did another pilot with him for a show years later. I just found him to be one of the most genuine, decent people. I know, Diana, you and he were very close, but I have one of 2 stories I'll tell. There are 2 stories that I tell that when people ask me about Luke. I was also, before I started directing on the show, and I think I ended up doing, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 episodes, Chuck. I don't even remember. But I was the associate producer on the show. And that was the person who oversaw post-production. And one of my responsibilities was to loop with the actors, sometimes to record the voices afterwards. And I remembered there's 3 stories I tell Luke. You remember you sent me to San Antonio, Chuck, to get some looping with him once?
That
he was
I don't
making
remember.
that movie. He was
when he was
making that
doing the
movie.
movie on the bull.
8 seconds, yeah.
Right.
8 seconds. Anyway, this was sometime we were shooting, and it was just at the height of the show's popularity. And I went out to see him for something, and they were shooting on location at I'm pretty sure it was the high school. Torrance, Chuck?
Yes.
Was it Torrance High School?
In the high school, in our third season, yeah, Torrance.
And the base camp, which is where the trailers for the makeup and all the different services and the actors, and they had set it up in such a way, but there was this huge fence, and there were hundreds and hundreds of kids waiting to see the moment that the actors would come out of their trailer and walk to the van to be driven to set. And it was literally like Beatlemania. The actors would go bananas. I mean, the fans would go crazy. And so I'd gone to see Luke in his trailer, and we were walking out, and and amidst all this massive pandemonium, he was just, he'd gotten so used to it. But we were walking along, and on the road, the one of the parking lot roads, there was a speed bump, right? And Luke looks at the speed bump, and he turns to me with all these fans screaming. He's one of the hottest things in the world. He says to me, before I made it as an actor, I did a lot of things. I did construction, amongst other things. I put that speed bump in. And he said it was such pride.
He laid asphalt.
He said it was such pride. He looked at it, and he's like, you know what? It's holding up pretty good. I did a good job. And he said it with such pride and such humility. And I just thought that's who that guy was. He was the most genuine, sweet guy. No matter how long it had been since you'd seen him, he acted like he couldn't have been happier to see you. He had that quality that certain people have where when you feel like you're talking to him, he was 100% focused on you.
What's your other one? You said you had 2 stories.
Another time, I can't remember if I was directing or if we had looped or something like that. I saw this little article. By the way, the third story I'm not going to tell is when I went down to see him in San Antonio. And I got in a little trouble. But I had seen some article, or I had seen something that Luke was driving back home, or maybe he had a farm in Kentucky. And I think he was driving back, and somewhere along the way, he had stopped at a diner, and he was reading the paper, and he saw that there was some school at whatever little town in Nebraska or whatever that didn't have a ramp. One of the kids in the school was in a wheelchair, and they didn't have the means to build a ramp for this kid to be able to access school on a regular basis. So Luke called up the school and said, I'll pay for it. And when I saw this thing, I said, why did you do that? I said, there was no publicity surrounding it, nothing. I don't even know how I found out about it. Maybe, I can't remember, somebody told me or something like that. And he literally looked at me and he said, if I didn't do it, who was going to do it?
Yeah, touching.
What if Drew? Now you didn't have direct him or have it, but how did Luke affect like a department like you and Tom and construction? Was he in your world too?
Absolutely. I mean, Luke was one of those people that he was everywhere, and if you worked on the company with him, he sought you out at some point. I mean, my daughter was born in February of 2000, and my wife brought her to the stage to come up for lunch. And Luke happened to be walking by, and he took our baby Bjorn and took Eva and walked her around and introduced her to everybody. And like, my wife is still like, she's just like, I still can't believe he did that, And it was just that selfless quality that he had, that he wanted to just celebrate in everybody else's joy.
No question.
I can still just remember the look. He was so happy that I had a child. I'll never forget that.
Yeah. That's beautiful stuff, man. I love hearing those stories about Luke.
He was a very unique person in Hollywood.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sara, when you look back on this episode and you look at your work in this, I mean, I think the work is phenomenal. I think we can all agree that these 2 episodes are some of the best here. What do you think when you look back on these episodes? Was it good times for you doing these couple things?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think I was, this is like, we don't need to have a whole therapy session about, my life or anything, but that being said,
Here we go.
back then, I think I just wasn't a very, I took a lot of things for granted, just in general. I took a lot of,
How
I
many
was
people
never,
here right now have take things for granted? Have taken things for granted? Right? Raise your hand. Right, everybody.
Yeah.
Melanie, you can raise your hand too.
Yeah.
It's just with.
I mean, it's just that's just a
youth.
natural thing, especially
It's
when
youth.
you're younger.
Yeah.
You know,
I
took it for granted that there would be another show after 90210.
right.
And while there was never another 90210. Hence, I'm on a loop here.
Yeah, I remember just feeling like when you were asking, like, did people recognize me in the streets? Yeah, totally, like all the time. And it was very exciting. It was exciting to be on a show that was super popular and all that. But to me, it just was like, all I could think of was like, well, why am I not in a Merchant Ivory movie? Where is my Helena Bonham Carter, role? Like I could never be. It was like always that thing of like you get to one rung and then you're just like, well, why am I not there?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
and that was really prevalent in the years you're talking about. In our cast, and Diana will confirm this. A lot of them loved to be there, and the other half was looking out. How can we go do other shows, get other places? It was a natural thing. Now everybody very happy what they're doing.
Well, it's also just, a lot of it to me is just, it came from just being immature and just being, and not getting the fact that, life isn't about that. And just kind of, I had to sort of get off of the achievement train for a minute in order to sort of like ground myself into the present and realize how grateful I was for just the present. And then I think COVID is doing that for a lot of us too, because we can't really, it's like that whole FOMO of like planning and plotting your career and where are you going next and what are you doing then and where are you going and what are you doing? It's just evaporated, and in a way there's kind of a spiritual silver lining to that. For me anyways, which is, just letting go of a lot of like pressure, maybe self-induced.
Sure.
I was going to say, Pete, did anyone see the Tori Spelling did a bit where she plays all the characters on 90210? It's on YouTube, and you should check it out. It's part of her show. She's really wacky because you were talking about, Chuck, about half the cast wasn't interested. Tori was always interested. When there'd be a new script on the pile, she'd come in there really excited to read it. And now, of course, she's doing this YouTube where she plays all her characters. I think she has a show that she needs social media support. What's the show called, Peter?
It's Celebrity Show Off, right?
Show
Melanie?
Off. Celebrity Show Off.
Yep, Celebrity Show Off. That's right.
Yeah. Do you have more info about the best way to help Tori out? Isn't it just go to her Instagram, click on the YouTube link, watch it all the way through, and comment and like on it, and then it helps her out, getting votes for that show. So let's help Tori out all the way here. Yeah.
Yeah, she like knocks herself out like a Word Wizard of Oz thing, and she imagines herself playing all the characters. It's
hilarious. David, for you looking back on these episodes, do you have fond memories of 90210? Is it fun to revisit?
Oh my God, yes. It's where I started in many ways. There were some great people on that show. Obviously, the people on this, I was very excited to see Drew and Diana. I see Diana every now and then. Larry, I haven't seen since that stellar performance, they were, to Chuck's point, like, it's really fun being involved in something that is affecting so many people and entertaining so many people. And, I even, when I was watching these episodes, and I remembered at the time, but Chuck did a lot. Chuck and Larry and the whole gang, they did a lot of brave stuff in the writing of the show. They were really kind of ahead of the curve on addressing so many of the social issues. Obviously, it's one of the things that made the show so successful. It was a special and fun time.
Yeah, Diana, how about you? Taking a look back.
I have to say, Yeah, I mean, it's great, but I have to tell you guys, when I would go in for interviews for script supervising, inevitably somebody who was interviewing me said, 90210, tell me about that. Oh my God, I was so addicted to that show. Like that was always the show that they were like, tell me about that show. What the heck was that show like? You know, I did a couple of episodes on Greek, filling in for somebody, and the creator of Greek, he said that show changed my life. So
Yeah, from a writer's perspective, you go in and they say you did 90210. It's too bad you didn't do a good show. Because it was an Aaron Spelling show. It was looked down. It was looked down upon. It was looked down upon. It was a stigma to be working for Aaron Spelling.
It's true. You guys, Gil Shilton, who had directed the Fire episode, you know, because he did a lot of spelling shows and spelling episodes. It was really hard for him after the shows ended and stuff for him to get hired other places. He'd kind of gotten pigeonholed into that spelling camp, and you know, he's a very good director. So
yes, he was very much.
I know, it's crazy.
Hey, Drew, how about you? Looking back on this, does it put you in a different mindset since you've left that world a little bit, or what do you think about the episodes looking back?
Oh, it reminds me of just, you know, those crazy times in my 20s where I could, you know, work 17 hours a day and it didn't bother me whatsoever. You know, I can't do that anymore. But, you know, it is one of those times that, you know, over the years when somebody finds out that you worked on that show, they're very interested. Oh, they want to. It used to be, is she really that big of a bitch? You know, I even told my wife, we go to a party, please don't tell anybody what I work on because they're just going to talk about them.
Drew, was she? No, I'm just kidding.
My experience is always somebody says, "What show did you work on?" And I say, "Well, Beverly Hills 90210," and if they look at me, and then I say, "And I was the producer of Northern Exposure." "Oh, I love that show." You know, if they're an older person, they'll give me that. And boy, I had so many people used to come up to me and say, I'm sorry, I've never seen your show. And I would usually say to them, "Well, that's okay. You're not in my demographic."
Please, missed opportunity to have the Rolling Stones on the show. Are you talking about this show?
Well, yes, we should have had them on. We forgot to ask.
Our podcast.
Yeah, where's Mick?
Right?
Jess wants to know the answer to your trivia question, Chuck. Yeah.
Right. Okay. The character the character who played Allison's girlfriend.
Dana.
Well, you said nobody on this show on this podcast was going to be able to answer the question. I was going to answer the question.
Oh, go for it, Dave.
Well, no, I mean
Well, there was a fan that commented. Karen Rosen was the other one. Is that correct?
She played but she wasn't in any of these episodes.
But Karen wasn't in either of those
this
episodes.
One was she was in the Fire episode, and then she played and then she was in a different one as a season. But in season 4, first of all, the person was named Christine Mejia, and she was our nanny and assistant who came out of UCLA. We lived near UCLA, and she lived there, and she wanted to be an actress at that point. And so she was the one in the 60s episode when, I guess I'll promote, in a few weeks, Jason Priestley and I are going to talk about him as a director. He'll be coming on. Diana, you should come on that too. Ask him how he, would get coverage and make sure the cameras are right? But we would do this. She's the one who's pulled out the joint and said Acapulco Gold to try to get some of our characters to do it. And so she's the one I was thinking about.
Wait, so what was the character's name?
Okay.
I missed
Dana.
It. Dana.
She's Dana in this one, and there she's hippie girl number 1.
Okay. Very cool. Melanie.
There was one more question from Fabian. He was wondering, actually, he read somewhere that Little Richard was a guest star on Rock of Ages. First, is that correct? And if so, did he play himself or did he play a character? And why did the scenes get cut?
You know what? Chuck?
No, he wasn't. The episode that he was
This
in
episode.
was the
Not this
final. The episode that was called. She came in through the bathroom window. It was Jason's first directing assignment, and Ken Stringer, who we were talking about as the guru of the double ups, he actually was a writer and wanted to be a writer. He's an AD, and this was his first script, and you know, we had a guest star in Burt Reynolds.
Mhm.
We wanted a big, you know, guest star to show up, and it was pretty hard for us to get one. And so Mr. Spelling called Burt and said, "Would you please do this?" And he showed up. But the one we got on our own was Little Richard, and we had and it was going to be the last scene, and we filmed with him for 25 minutes.
David's calling a timeout.
I'm Chuck. I may be completely remembering this wrong, and I'm ultimately going to defer to you. Didn't I direct Little Richard, and wasn't it a coda to Rock of Ages?
You know, I've seen a still picture which shows it was. I mean, I didn't remember it myself. I feel bad I didn't get his
I'm
autograph.
almost positive because it's after the concert and everybody's in the Peach Pit.
And there's Little Richard.
It is, but believe me, it is completely possible that I'm remembering this wrong. But I thought I directed him.
Boy.
Well, I would have had to have written it.
So,
it was my script.
Did you not write it, Larry?
Did you write it? I sort of remember this, but I don't. I mean, but I've seen a still which says Voodoo, you know, that he's in the Stones show, and I wasn't sure of it. We have to ask Darren Martin. Darren Martin will know.
Yes, Darren, if you're watching, please.
Well, he correct me too, because I thought he was in the Burt Reynolds one now. For how many years is that? So I like to get my head straight on it too.
Magda pointed out that she said Dana, and she was upset that she didn't get the shout out. So there you go. You got that answer, Magda. Thank you.
Good job, Magda.
Thanks, Magda.
Yep.
Or Chuck's nanny.
Listen, guys, I think we kind of nailed double ups here. I think we covered it. I don't think there's much more we can say about it.
There was one thing I want to say. Up in Flames was written by Meredith Steen, who went on to create Cold Case and work on Homeland. And the character in the Rehab, Jeff King, was very good. I thought he did a bunch of shows for us through the end. He really was strong in challenging Luke and making that really seem real. And you'll notice in the Rehab room, the characters are named Shira, which is Jessica's daughter, and Dee, which was my wife, and we always stuck stuff in there. Anyway, I just want to add that.
No, that's great. I love that stuff. Also, maybe real quick, the character Charlie that's in this. The drug scenes with Dylan. Somebody was asking me about that. Where did that name come from? Where did he come from? Creating that character.
Well, he's going to bring in the the whole past life therapy thing. He's going to become the writer and become the vehicle.
That's what the screenplay is writing about.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, was Charlie named after Chuck Rosen, or was he named after Charlie Watts?
Oh yeah, sure, both.
Charlie Brown, I thought. Charlie Brown. Charlie Horse.
I don't know. Sometimes the name's just clear.
The commercial when he's walking down the street. There's so many Charlie choices.
Definitely.
It's true. It's true.
All right, guys. I think we wrapped this. We got this really, really great. Next week, Chuck, we're bringing Bethany Rooney on, right? She's directed, and we're going to talk about a couple episodes.
Bethany, and if I start listing, what we start with. Perfect Mom and Things to Do on a Rainy Day, and
we had that Stormy Weather. Stormy Weather we're going to do a little bit, and
Lovers Leap, right?
Yeah, but it's Stormy Weather, which we just.
So she was there. She directed episode number 3, so she can 4 actually, but it aired 3rd because it was so good. The first time we'll be talking about it in depth. Drew, were you there in the first 12?
I was not there the first season. I did.
Diana, you were. You can't. I remember when Diana came because the other script supervisor.
I came after Christmas the first year.
Yeah, I remember writing the show.
I tell that story a lot.
I saw a comment here that Ray Pruitt
saves people in the
fire.
Was that? Oh yeah, Ray Pruitt.
Ray Pruitt, the fireman, became a fireman. He actually saves people in the fire, and then in real life he became a fireman.
Yes, I did forget about that. Yes, I saw that.
He was the hero.
Yeah, he was great in this too. By the way, I mean, what a friggin' awesome thing to do is you talked about it before, him playing on the stone stage, and you've got that awesome shot of him at the empty stadium. I mean, that was pretty awesome for Jamie Walters, I would imagine, at that point. But anyway, guys,
on that stage in the empty Rose Bowl. I mean, Dave, you and I on the Scout, I had to do a little Mick dance. That was incredible.
Oh, that's very cool.
Wish we had a video of that, Drew.
Listen, guys, I thought this was great. I just always all about gratitude these days. Listen to Sara, Diana, David, Drew. Thank you so much for the work that you did on this show. Somebody said that the show made a difference in their lives, and I think the work that you did, even though it's so long ago, it is true. It does resonate to many people, including myself, and that's why I love doing this show with Chuck and Larry. So
that's right. Picket Fence won the Emmys, but nobody talks about Picket Fence.
Yeah, that was a good show.
It was good.
But much love to you guys for the work that you did. I can't thank you enough. And David, I loved the Heroes stuff and a lot of the other stuff that you did, and Diana as well. So thank you so much for being here and doing this. And Melanie, thank you for filling in for Lilly. This is great, guys. We will see you
Great
all
to see everybody
next week.
Bye, all.
All right. Later.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.